When using IPS e.max ZirCAD, conservative preparation is possible. Prepare a circular step with rounded inner edges or a chamfer at an angle of approximately 10 to 30 degrees. For crowns, a uniform reduction of the anatomical tooth shape of 0.8 mm is sufficient. Ensure a preparation angle of 4 to 8 degrees in order to be able to cement the restoration conventionally, for example with ZirCAD Cement. In anterior teeth, the incisal edge of the prepared tooth should have a thickness of at least 1 mm so that the incisal area of the crown can be reached by the milling tools. After creating the patient profile in the software, activate the desired restoration type. Select IPS e.max ZirCAD Prime from the Materials menu and then click on the tooth to be restored. After scanning, switch to the design phase. A preparation margin is automatically suggested. Adjust if necessary. Check the design for any light blue areas because they indicate that the minimum wall thickness has not been reached. If necessary, apply material in these areas. After having switched to the manufacturing step, the restoration design is displayed in the block. To ensure that restorations made of IPS e.max ZirCAD Prime show a clearly visible enamel area, they must be positioned as high up as possible in the block. The incisal area is displayed in white and the dentin area in red, which facilitates positioning of the restoration in the block. It may be necessary to rotate the crown around the block holder axis in order to adjust the translucency gradient. Now select the production option. Selecting the fine or extra fine mode reduces the manual effort required to smooth the surface after milling. However, a longer milling time will be necessary than in the super fast mode. Preferably select dry machining to avoid drying time after the wet machining process. Then start the milling process. Before inserting the block into the machine, the shrinkage factor of the respective batch must be read in. Hold the side of the block with the data matrix code in front of the prime mill camera. If the code is not read automatically, or if you still have an older device, you can enter the shrinkage factor manually. The code always begins with an asterisk followed by a 7-character string. Remove the milled restoration from the milling machine. Cut the holding bar to the block using a fine cross-cut burr. Smooth out the attachment point, taking into account the shape of the crown margin and the proximal contact points. Note that the material is sensitive in this state and avoid removing too much material. Work at low speed and low pressure. Remove any adhering zirconium oxide dust with a brush or by blowing it off. Adhering zirconium oxide particles can sinter and lead to inaccuracy of fit. Even before sintering, slight shape corrections can be made or machining grooves resulting from the milling process can be smoothed out. The spiral wheel polishers from the OptraGloss Extra Oral range are suitable for this procedure. Note that the material is sensitive in this state and avoid removing too much material. Work at a speed of 5,000 to a maximum of 10,000 revolutions per minute and low pressure. Hold the crown between 2 fingers so that the crown edges are protected. Move the polisher in a continuous motion over the surface to be polished. Always polish towards the edge of the crown. Polishing over the crown margin may damage the polisher or even lead to the loss of the restoration. Place the restoration directly on the sintering tray with its occlusal surface facing downwards, or in the case of anterior restorations, with its labial surface facing downwards. The Programmat CS6 can be loaded with a maximum of 3 crowns at a time. For crowns, select the Super Speed sintering program, which is intended for IPS e.max ZirCAD Prime. After a sintering time of 15 minutes, the furnace opens. To avoid cracks in the restoration, it's important to allow the restoration to cool down before removing it. After sintering, the restoration always needs to be polished, even if it's been pre-polished with OptraGloss Extra Oral before sintering, or even if you decide to glaze or stain the restorations. The dark blue polishes are used for pre-polishing. The optimum speed is between 10,000 and 15,000 revolutions per minute. To minimize wear of the polishes and heat buildup, only work with low contact pressure. Switch to the light blue polishes for high gloss polishing and polish all surfaces. An optimum speed of 10,000 to 15,000 revolutions per minute also applies here. If you want to achieve a particularly high gloss, you can complete the polishing process with OptraGloss Extra Oral polishing paste. Pick up some of the paste with a goat hair brush and polish the desired areas again at low speed. Depending on the degree of polishing, the shade effect is increased. For restorations that are only polished and not glazed, it may be necessary to select a block whose shade is one shade lighter than the target shade. OptraGloss Extra Oral polishing paste must not be used if the restoration is to be glazed or stained. Select the largest possible crystallization pin that best fills the inside of the restoration but does not touch the crown walls. Fill the inside of the restoration with IPS Object Fix Putty or flow firing paste up to the restoration margin. Press the crystallization pin into the IPS Object Fix Putty or flow and smooth out the displaced paste with a plastic spatula. The pin should be firmly seated and the restoration margins optimally supported. This prevents contamination of the inner surface with glazing material. Remove any contamination on the outside of the restoration with a brush moistened with water. The restoration must be dry before applying the glazing material. There are two ways to apply glazing material, either with a glazing spray or conventionally with a brush. To apply the glaze spray, shake the glaze spray vigorously immediately before use so that the mixing ball moves freely in the container. Hold the restoration directly by the crystallization pin to prevent the IPS speed tray from being coated with glaze as well. Spray the restoration in short bursts while rotating the restoration to create an even layer. If necessary, spray again until all surfaces are evenly coated. Apply the glaze material in an even layer on the restoration. If desired, the glazing material may be thinned by adding a little IPS e.max CAD crystallization glaze liquid. Avoid applying too thick a layer of glazing material. Make sure to avoid pooling, particularly on the occlusal surface. Place a maximum of 3 units on the IPS speed tray with the crystallization pins. Start the firing process with the specified firing parameters. Prior to seating, condition the IPS e.max ZirCAD Prime restoration by blasting the inner aspects of the crown with aluminium oxide. Thoroughly rinse the restoration with water spray and dry with oil-free air. If necessary, clean the restoration in an ultrasonic unit for about 1 minute. Clean the preparation with a polishing brush and a fluoride-free cleaning paste such as the fluoride-free Proxit. Rinse the preparation with water spray and dry it with water and oil-free air. Apply the desired amount of ZirCAD cement directly from the Automix syringe onto the restoration. Seat the restoration and retain it in place, exerting uniform pressure. Tack cure the luting material for 5 to 10 seconds using blue phase power cure, for example, or allow it to self-cure for approximately 2 minutes. Use a suitable instrument, for example a scaler, to remove the excess cement. Curing is complete 4.5 minutes after placement. The restoration must be held in position during curing. Remove cured excess with finishing diamonds or flexible polishing discs, for example, OptraGloss. Finish the proximal surfaces using finishing and polishing strips.